good morning, and a good morning it truly is. And welcome to the oldest Civil War reunion commemoration in the United States of America. Something this community needs to be very, very proud of, as all of us who participate are. It started way back in 1867, just 2 years after the end of the war, when the men would meet here for a picnic reunion, which was extremely common for the next 50 years. And the picnic was held right around the lone blackjack oak tree that still stood at that particular time. Very few times in the many decades to follow would there not be a reunion, even though there were a few cancellations during World War I and World War II. In 1926, they had a huge celebration here. In 1962, a huge celebration here. And since then, 54 straight years, the people of Lone Jack have had this celebration. That's another thing you need to be very, very proud of. And now you're part of the 54th in a row. 270 men lie in this hallowed ground in two 80-foot trenches, one for the Union, one for the Confederate, stacked on top of each other, and then another small trench where 18 more were buried after they died for their wounds soon after. 115 horses were stacked as well as they could and set afire. Already at the eve of August 16th, the smell and stench of the dead horses and the men were just unbelievable. Horses, well-trained horses, would not enter this area for the next week or so because of this erroneous smell. 3- and 4-year veterans who would fight from the beginning to the end of the war, who fought here, would say over and over, there was never a worse battle than Lone Jack. The heat, the firing, the hand-to-hand combat, and all the things that took place here that particular day. Kersey Coates, a well-known downtown Kansas City politician and builder, was this only battle he fought in. And Stephen B. Elkins, this is the only battle he ever fought in. He would later go on to be a U.S. Senator and the United States Secretary of War. And he would always tell people about that horrible night on the 16th of August in 1862 when he walked down Main Street of Lone Jack and heard the cries of the wounded begging for water and begging for death to come quicker, and the whinnying of the horses and the blood and the half-naked men who had their clothes stripped from them. It was a sight he would never forget and would disgust him about war, which is a little different for a Secretary of War. You know, this is the only state in the Union that made every man between 14 and 35 declare which side they are on. Order number 19 in 1862, they had to go to the nearest Union post. If they didn't show up, they were marked enemy. And that actually worked for the southern side much better, because thousands of men who were just going to try to stay home and farm or run their business were now forced to go to the brush, or forced to go to the Confederate Guard, or eventually to the Confederate Army. When you read the men on the southern side that were here, if you know anything about your local history, you know it sounds like a Hall of Fame. And inside the museum, make sure you go in there, is a picture and a story of each of these men. They were all here, but Joe Shelby, who was out recruiting someone else, William Quantrell, who was mopping up after winning the Battle of Independence a few days earlier, and General John T. Hughes, who died in the last charge with the Battle of Independence a few days before. Then Cole Younger is also rumored to be here. How did we get to this point where all of a sudden there's thousands of soldiers, artillery pieces, and horses right here in the little town of Lone Jack? Well, of course, we fought the border war with the Kansas Jayhawks for 7 years prior. Our men, unfortunately, had much more experience than most other soldiers at the time. And also, when the war starts in 1861, forget what they tell you about East. In 1861, in the first year of the war, the official Army records say there were 157 battles in the United States. 66 were in Missouri, 42%. That's more than second and third place Virginia and West Virginia put together. In 1861, there were more people killed in this war in Missouri than any other state. 9 States only had one battle apiece. And, of course, 3 of the 5 largest battles in 1861 in this nation were fought here in Missouri, in Carthage, Wilson's Creek, and Lexington. So we were there from the beginning and there at the end. Some people claim that we're the show me state. We all know that, but how did we get that name? Supposedly from this era. When people would meet in the brush or on the road and not know who they were, they would say, "What side are you on?" And they would say something, and they would say, "Show me your loyalty. Prove me your loyalty." And that's where we came across that. This town of Lone Jack was headed for great things in 1862. It had 5 major roads coming in and out of it. And then this happened, of course, and it was a long time getting over it. They would be very slow to recover. In fact, it was almost 100 years before they would no longer be classified as a village, but a town. 1962 again. After the battle, there were constant surveillance and harassment by Kansas Jayhawkers, particularly the 9th. That's not by accident. This was the site of an early war Confederate victory, and Lone Jack was marked for extermination. There are no doubts about that. And then, of course, nearby was the 6-man massacre. 6 innocent people just trying to do what they've been ordered to do on order number 11, but before they could do it, they were executed. And then, of course, order number 11 happened, and if you don't know what that is, make sure and see me or some of these other people afterwards, and they will tell you it was the worst thing that the United States government has ever done against its own people in the history of this country so far. Then after the war, of course, there was revenge by neighbors, the Drake Constitution, drought, grasshopper plagues, and a new kind of politician in Washington City, ones that would make sure that states' rights would never raise their head again. The training for the South was not here. The equipment for the South was not here. The numbers for the South were not here. But their courage was here at Lone Jack. Their beliefs were here at Lone Jack. The Yankees were outnumbered. The Yankees were outflanked. The Yankees had their guns taken from them, their artillery pieces. The Yankees had their leader wounded. They could have left several times and no one would have said anything, but they kept coming back. Their courage was here at Lone Jack. The Yankee beliefs were here at Lone Jack. It was a hot, hot day for both sides. It was a killing day for both sides, beyond our comprehension. Valor, courage, determination, and dedication. They were all Americans, and that's what Americans are about. Lone Jack is a special place, and these were special men. Unfortunately, America does not learn lessons from history as well as they should. And I know if these men could come back and their spirits still linger here, they would tell us that war is hell and that the politicians should try more to compromise. Not only did the men and the animals suffer here, but the women and the children and the old people and the innocent. This once prosperous town of 2,100 people was gone in a puff of smoke, and the people into the wind. This was truly brother against brother, family against family, and neighbor against neighbor, and Missourian against Missourian. This was a fine example of the worst kind of war there is, Civil War. It is truly the site of an early Confederate victory that we said that it was there earmarked for extermination. To you men whose spirits are still with us here today, we thank you today for your courage and valor that day. We know words are easy, but deeds are difficult. We know what you did here, and what you did was mostly for your family and for your beliefs and for in the future that we would all have that dream once again, that America would be a free, democratic, God-fearing nation where a man can walk free of government interference, knowing that if you would work hard, you would be rewarded. A dream where all lives matter, where all our grandchildren could grab our hands and look us in the eyes and say, "Grandfather, job well done." Soldiers of Lone Jack, job well done. Do now bow your heads with me in a few moments of silence for these valiant men. Thank you. Would you please read forward?